tonight.
Fanfare and massive crowds greet the president in India.
Namaste, Trump! Namaste!
Packing the world's largest cricket stadium ahead of a picture-perfect tour of the Taj Mahal.
We're gonna beat Trump in November.
This as the Democratic frontrunner prepares for the next big contest after a big win in Nevada. And
the coronavirus is tearing its way around the world, with global markets taking a dive. And
the debate over faith-based foster care heads to the Supreme Court. Plus,
Kobe was my dear friend. He was like a little brother.
A memorial service for Kobe Bryant. All this and more on Faith Nation.
President Trump promotes peace and offers high praise during his two-day tour of India. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Abigail Robertson. The president taking the Trump show to India, where he addressed a cheering crowd of more than 100,000.
They packed the world's largest cricket stadium, which prompted President Trump to praise the sport, along with Bollywood, home of the Indian film industry.
He also announced a multi-billion-dollar arms deal. The massive campaign-style rally in Western India comes amid a hero's...
I am pleased to announce that tomorrow our representatives will sign deals to sell over $3 billion in the absolute finest state-of-the-art military helicopters and other equipment to the Indian Armed Forces. I believe that the United States should be India's premier defense partner, and that's the way it's working out. Together we will defend our sovereignty, security, and protect a free and open Indo-Pacific region for our children and for many, many generations to come.
The massive campaign-style rally in Western India comes amid a hero's welcome for the president and his family.
Mr. Trump, former owner of the Taj Mahal Casino in Atlantic City, New Jersey, took in the real thing with First Lady Melania during a sunset tour of the gleaming white marble mausoleum.
Ahead of the president's visit, the group Save the Persecuted Christians sent the White House a letter outlining the suffering of Christians in India. Here with us now to talk about this further is Frank Gaffney, president and CEO of Save the Persecuted Christians. Frank, thank you so much for being here. And I just want to start by asking you, that was a massive crowd we saw there in India. Does that crowd size surprise you?
Everything is big in India, I think, so it's not entirely surprising, but I think it also is evidence of the very strong support that President Trump is receiving from Prime Minister Modi at this moment when there are some very important common interests between our two nations, the most important of which, I think by far, is China and the threat that it represents to both of these democratic nations and their people.
Frank, how dangerous is it for a Christian in India? And can you talk a little bit about what you specifically asked the president to do in your letter?
I think it's dangerous now, and it seems likely to become more dangerous, unfortunately, because the Prime Minister's Hindu nationalist parties that support him and helped him become, again, just recently, the re-elected leader of the world's largest democracy, are very intent on essentially Hinduizing, if I can use that expression, the nation of India, in which there are something on the order of 100 million Christians and a very large number of Muslims, as well as other minority faiths. And the trouble is that the people, at least driving the agenda of those parties, and presumably it's with at least the acquiescence of Prime Minister Modi, if not his overt support, seek to make those minorities either Hindus or absent, driving them literally out of the country. There are some in the extreme wings of them that would seem intent on putting them to death, for that matter, as well.
So your letter called on the president
to speak up? We wanted the president to do three things, basically. We wanted him to try to extract a pastor, an American pastor, who is being held in the country. It seems as a somewhat capricious and unnecessary provocation that hopefully could be ended by him coming back with the president on Air Force One. Secondly, we wanted the president to raise the issue of Christian communities being heavily persecuted in India with the prime minister. And third, we wanted to make, if possible, we wanted him to meet with some of those Christian pastors. It seems as though the trip's being truncated, so maybe that's not in the cards. But lastly, we wanted him to put the prime minister on notice that if the American people are going to support the kind of close partnership that I think it is in both countries' interest to have, they need to know that Christians are not being persecuted. That will undermine that kind of support.
All right. Frank Gaffney, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Well, to campaign 2020, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders won the Nevada caucus Saturday and by a landslide. That's put party leaders in a difficult position, wondering whether he can be stopped.
In spite of growing fears he could lose to President Trump if he becomes the nominee, Sanders predicts he'll ride the momentum all the way to the White House.
We are not only going to win here in Texas on Super Tuesday, we're going to beat Trump in November.
Sanders' next test is South Carolina, Democrat Congressman Jim Clyburn's home state, who's not hesitant about questioning whether Southern Democrats will rally behind the Democratic Socialist.
This is South Carolina, and South Carolinians are pretty leery about that title, socialist.
Comments like this one made on 60 Minutes about Fidel Castro and Cuba add to their concern.
We're very opposed to the authoritarian nature of Cuba. But, you know, it's unfair to simply say everything is bad. You know, when Fidel Castro came into office, you know what he did? He had a massive literacy program.
Moderate Democrats still in the race are sounding the alarm.
In our one shot to take on this president, let us take a sober look at what is at stake for our party, for our values, and for those with the most to lose.
With Joe Biden, who finished a distant second in Nevada, warning Democrats might lose ground in the House and Senate if Sanders is the nominee.
I don't think he can beat Donald Trump and keep a Democratic Senate, get a Democratic Senate and keep a Democratic House.
A new CBS poll released Sunday shows Biden's lead in South Carolina narrowing over Sanders. Biden stands at 28% of likely Democrat voters, and Sanders now at 23%. Biden's lead has dwindled from 43% last October.
You have in your hands the power, unlike any time in a long time, to determine who the next Democratic nominee will be.
Even if Biden wins a narrow victory in South Carolina Saturday, it may not be enough to slow Sanders down, with Super Tuesday coming just 3 days later. If Sanders wins a majority of those 14 states, there may be very little that worrisome party leaders or opponents like Biden and others can do to stop his momentum to winning the nomination.
Well, joining us now for our Faith Nation political panel, Ray Suarez, veteran journalist and co-host of the weekly radio program World Affairs and New York Now. Ray, always great to see you.
Good to be back.
Democratic Party leaders seem to be increasingly expressing concern about Bernie Sanders and his socialist label. I couldn't help but notice you tweeted today about it being sort of a double-edged sword.
Well, there are many people who will be attracted to that, especially younger voters who are a little down on capitalism right now. If you're strung out on college debt, having trouble paying your rent, and not finding a job that you feel pays enough to compensate for your education, it's a tough time to say 3 cheers for capitalism. Among older voters, it's going to be poison, really going to be bad.
Yeah. And Ray, in 2016, we see President Trump, very much the outsider Republican candidate, win the nomination. Now here we have Senator Bernie Sanders, who's kind of seems right now to be running away with the Democrat nomination. He's also sort of an outsider candidate. What does this mean for the establishment Democrat and Republican parties?
So much of an outsider that he wouldn't accept the Democratic label or the Democratic line on the ballot when he ran for re-election to the U.S. Senate recently. So, yeah, he may caucus with the Democrats in the Senate, but he's very much an outsider. Yeah. Party leaders are worried about down-ballot races, whether the Democrats can hold on to their majority in the House of Representatives and build on their sizable minority in the U.S. Senate. they feel that a Sanders candidacy doesn't help them get there.
But does that potentially make him a worthy candidate or opponent for Trump, since they kind of come in the same spheres as the outsider?
Look, independents say in large numbers they're going to vote for Bernie Sanders, or at least give him a look. A lot of the Democrats who vote for other candidates in the primaries, if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, they will gravitate toward him because the distaste for President Trump is so strong among Democrats.
Michael Bloomberg poured $400 million of his own personal money into his unconventional campaign, basically hedging all his bets on Super Tuesday. If you look at the polls, it looks more and more like it's not going to pay off.
If you wait to get in and plant your flag in some state down the road and say, here's where I'm really going to start running for president, ask President Rudolph Giuliani. It doesn't really work. And there's a lot of cases of that just not working. You got to get in early, you got to mix it up early, and him waiting to appear till Nevada, so far, not such a great idea.
Now, Ray, I want to ask you about some non-election related news that came in today. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals sided with the Trump administration to uphold bans on taxpayer-supported abortion clinics. The Ninth Circuit historically is more left-leaning. So what does this decision mean to you?
There are new judges on the Ninth Circuit. That's to begin with. This is really a return to the gag orders of the 1980s. It's still against the law to use taxpayer dollars to perform abortions, and remains so. What this does is restrains physicians and other medical personnel from giving any advice to someone in their clinic if it receives Title X money that has anything to do with ending pregnancies.
Veteran journalist, Ray Suarez, it is always a treat to have you with us.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, coming up, the coronavirus sends the global market plummeting, sounding new alarm bells around the world.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Tonight, the coronavirus sending shockwaves through the global financial market.
U.S. markets closed on a major downturn, with the Dow Industrial Average down 3.7% and the S&P 500 down 3.5%. This after sliding shares and sinking oil prices tanked markets. From Britain to Paris to Italy, as the number of people infected or killed by the viral outbreak surged across the globe.
Here now, all the way from New York, is Gordon Chang, columnist with the Daily Beast and the National Interest, and on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang. He's the author of the book, The Coming Collapse of China. Gordon, thank you for being with us. In an article you published today, you wrote, the coronavirus is killing China's factories. How much of that is contributing to the economic chaos?
Well, it's a lot. And it's not just the problems in China, where the economy, I think, is contracting this quarter. But what it's doing is it's rippling out beyond China, because China is a factory floor. So we're having a lot of empty shelves in the near future, especially the big box retailers in the U.S., which keep lean inventories. Apple Computer last week basically said they're going to have a shortage of iPhones because of the problems in China. We know that Hyundai, the South Korean conglomerate, closed a car plant in South Korea because it couldn't get car parts from China. Fiat Chrysler did the same. GM might have the same problems. This is going to be an issue that we're going to see going forward.
Wow. And what does this mean for China's role in the global supply chain?
Well, China's going to become a less reliable member. You know, up to now, it's really prospered because companies felt that they could manufacture there, they wouldn't have political problems, and also, of course, they'd have low costs. Right now, what they're seeing is that the regime is unstable. Also, China's been quite belligerent, so there are political issues, geopolitical issues. I think you're going to see factories move out of China. It was already happening before for a number of reasons, but this coronavirus epidemic is going to accelerate that process.
Gordon, along those lines, can you talk about the coronavirus and how it's created a critical vulnerability in the shortage of industrial safety masks?
Yeah, this is one of the areas that are a problem. So, for instance, in the United States, it's hard to get a medical mask. Now, China actually sold them to hospitals in New York, for instance, and these masks were put on the water. But China ordered the ships to be turned around because it had a critical shortage itself. And it's not just medical masks, it's industrial masks. So, for instance, in many parts of China, in Chongqing and in Guangdong province, there's a 2-mask-a-day rule. Every employer must provide 2 industrial masks for every worker. And in Chongqing, you can't open and restart your factory unless you can show the authorities that you've got 2 weeks of supply of masks. This means that a number of factories are not operating right now because they don't have masks. They're just not available.
And Gordon, you mentioned a lot of popular brands that Americans rely on, Apple, Hyundai, that these shipments are going to be late. So when will the American people start noticing these shortages?
In the big box stores with the leaner inventories, you could see the shortages sometime next month. I think in general, the shortages will become evident in basically the middle of April. And so it's just a question of whether companies can make adjustments in their supply chains, and eventually they'll be able to, but not on such short notice. So I think that probably within a month or so, people will start to notice.
Gordon, real quickly, the president's trip to India, you tweeted today that China is Asia's past, India is its future. What did you mean by that? And again, we only have about 30 seconds.
Well, China right now doesn't look like it's going to dominate the world. It has all sorts of problems, including demography. India, if it not already, is going to be the world's most populous state. China will go into accelerated demographic decline. This is not a good story for Beijing.
All right, author and columnist Gordon Chang. Gordon, thanks so much for your insights.
Thank you, John and Abby.
Coming up, a major case over faith-based adoption and same-sex couples is heading to the Supreme Court. What that potentially means for religious freedom in America.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back to Faith Nation. A religious rights case over faith-based adoption and same-sex couples is heading to the Supreme Court.
The High Court announced today that it will hear a challenge to a ruling involving a Philadelphia Catholic group barred from offering foster care after it refused to work with same-sex couples. This after a lower court ruling saying the city's policies did not target the Catholic group for its religious beliefs. The case could have major implications for the separation of church and state.
And here now is Lori Wyndham, senior counsel at Beckett, a nonprofit law firm dedicated to protecting free expression of all religious traditions. Lori, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me here.
And I just want to start by asking you, we learned today that the Supreme Court is going to take up this case involving faith-based foster care. Why do you think they decided to take up this case?
This is a critically important case, and it's happening across the country. What happened in Philadelphia is terrible. The city of Philadelphia put out an urgent call for 300 more foster parents to take in all the foster kids in the system. And then just days later, they stopped allowing any foster children to be placed with Catholic Social Services of Philadelphia and any of the families who work with them. What's especially sad is that we have seen this again and again and across the country. There's an attempt right now to shut down faith-based foster agencies in Michigan. We have actually seen Catholic Social Services close its doors in Boston, in San Francisco, in Illinois, and here in Washington, D.C. If the Supreme Court doesn't step in, and until the Supreme Court steps in, this pattern is just going to continue.
No, it's a little bit of a different role for you, but can you explain what's at stake for same-sex couples? Are there enough sufficient alternatives for same-sex couples that either want to adopt or provide foster care?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, when this whole case started, nobody could even find a time when a same-sex couple had even approached Catholic Social Services asking for a home study certification for foster care. There are 28 other agencies in the city of Philadelphia alone who are happy to work with same-sex couples. The city of Philadelphia says you should look around, research agencies, and find the best fit for you. Catholic Social Services is just asking that it be able to keep its doors open and continue serving families and kids.
Last year, the Trump administration proposed a new rule through the Health and Human Services Department that would let faith-based groups continue receiving taxpayer funding, even if they exclude LGBT families. Why is that not sufficient?
Well, we do think that the rule that has been proposed is a good rule, and we hope the government will take steps to protect foster agencies. But unfortunately, what we've seen is that even when you have good rules at the federal level, at the state and local level, there's been an attempt to crack down and to penalize religious agencies whose beliefs are different than the beliefs of the city or state leadership.
Do you have any idea how many faith-based adoption or foster care agencies are at stake here?
You know, it's hard to say. We know that they've already shut down in one state and 5 major cities. We know that there are threats to several agencies in the state of Michigan, and we fear that this problem will only continue without a positive ruling from the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and just my final question for you is, are there any prior Supreme Court cases that might point that the Supreme Court might rule in favor of these faith-based adoption agencies?
Yes, in fact, we think that the lower courts should have ruled in their favor based on what the Supreme Court has done before. You know, I know you're familiar with the Masterpiece Cake Shop case where they said that you couldn't discriminate against someone because of his Christian religious beliefs, and we think that's exactly what's happened here in Philadelphia as well.
All right, Lori Wyndham, Senior Counsel at Beckett, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Black Mamba comes home. Kobe Bryant's heartfelt memorial service next.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Well, finally tonight, Los Angeles remembered its champion Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and the 7 others who died in that deadly helicopter crash last month.
The memorial held in the Staples Center offered an emotional reflection of lives taken too soon.
Kobe was my dear friend. He was like a little brother.
May you both rest in peace and have fun in heaven until we meet again one day.
The ceremony was packed with musical performances by Beyonce and Alicia Keys, emotional tributes by Michael Jordan and other NBA and WNBA stars, and a tearful eulogy by Kobe's wife, Vanessa. The memorial offered a look into Kobe and Gianna's legacy and the ongoing impact of their loss on basketball and the sports community. Also today, Vanessa Bryant filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the company that owned the helicopter Kobe was on board when he died.
A lot of tears today at that ceremony.
I sure got choked up watching that, and I cannot believe his wife was able to just go out there with such strength and talk about the death. I can't imagine that.
Definitely a lot of strength and resolve. It was also nice to have moments of levity with Michael Jordan just kind of laughing and crying.
I know.
Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
We'll see you tomorrow.